Yeah. Let's get started. So my name is Mohit Srivastava. I am a developer evangelist here at Salesforce. I already talked about my team, right? It's a very small team. I just joined like 3-4 months back, and my background is I have worked on Salesforce for almost 10 years. And my previous job was actually building app exchange packages, so I'm more familiar with like package development model. But then I also spent like almost 3 to 4 years of my career prior to building app exchange packages as a consultant. So I've gone through like what it requires to configure solutions on platform, right, using our sales cloud, service cloud, and what is required to actually get it up and running to the customers, right. And honestly, at that time, this thing was not there. Like the packaging was no more. It was not meant for, SI clients. We always used to use like chain sets to deploy certain things from one org to another org, or use Eclipse, in my time, right? And now we have Salesforce CLI, etc. So I'll go through that, go through everything now in detail. So what I've done is I have very minimal slides, right? And, more on it will be like hands-on showing an org where I have some packages installed, and then I'll show you how to create like an org dependent package, right? And I'll talk about what is the difference between org dependent packages and what it is meant for. One thing to bear in mind is, like, when we talk about org dependent unlock packages, right, it is not meant for an ISV, right, or an app exchange. It is meant for normal SI customer development, right? So let's get started. So before I have to start, like, because this is a Salesforce presentation, right, and this feature is in beta, meaning it's a beta feature. We are still working on it, so there might be things, right, that we need to consider. For example, do not make any purchasing decision based on anything that I forward looking say. Always make what is currently available on the product. Do not make any decisions based on the roadmap that I might give you. Okay. So before anything, right, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for being part of the Salesforce community. It's awesome. And yeah, it's diverse. It's awesome. I love these pictures, and our community is so diverse. And even during this time, like when the whole world is in this pandemic time, right, we are all together, right? So thank you so much for that. Okay, so agenda. So today I'm gonna give you an overview of what is Salesforce metadata. So this is the heart of everything, right? Like, what is Salesforce metadata? If you have never worked with like Salesforce metadata, right? If you're an admin, let's say, this will be a good introduction to understand what is Salesforce metadata. And then we'll talk about like what is dependency, right? What dependency does between the metadata, and then the Salesforce application package, like what is a package, right? And what are the different development models in that package. And then we will take today's topic, that is runtime unlock package, and then I'll give you a demo of how to create an unlocked runtime package and what are its differences compared to unlocked packages. Okay, so let's begin. So first thing, I wanted to give you an introduction of Salesforce metadata overview, right? So what is a metadata, right? So in Salesforce environment, right, today, when you try to configure certain things, which could be, creating objects, fields, or page layouts, or, you're creating writing pages or reports, right, whatnot, right? So everything goes and sits inside that org as an XML packet, right? So if you are a developer, you're already familiar with it, right? You are extracting it. So that is the configuration, right? Everything that you do, it's stored as a data. It's still stored as it's a metadata. We call it as metadata. It's stored in the org. You can put, by the metadata XML definition, you can actually retrieve it, and deploy it to the another org. So imagine if metadata was not there, then you would have to actually go and repeat all these configurations again and again in every org, which is really, painful and boring, right? So that's why we have this metadata. Now it consists of configuration code, right? The code elements could be like Visual Force pages or Aura components, or you're writing Apex. In fact, I missed LWC, it could be also LWC, right? So anything that you're writing code, right? Again, it is stored as a metadata. There's a metadata behind it that's running, right? Similarly, we have settings and features, right? So settings and features, now this is again, this is like, for example, if you go to your Salesforce org, you configure certain settings, right? There's a setup page where you configure probably address settings or account settings, or you're doing some kind of a bot configuration or live agent, right? So everything is actually categorized as either settings or the feature in the org. And that definition, you can define it when you're actually, so today there is a metadata API for settings, right? So if you go to the metadata API developer guide, you'll see all those settings listed. And if you create a package XML with that setting, you will be able to retrieve it. So you can then deploy that setting from one org to another org. Now that is possible, right? But there is this concept called feature, right, which depends on the licenses. Those things, right, you cannot sort of deploy it today from one environment to another environment. You actually get it from the production, like when you buy your Salesforce licenses, right? So in general, a metadata is everything. It's configuration. You have code, settings, and features, right? And this is what makes it so exciting to move one org just like as it is to the another environment. So it's very important to sort of understand, like, the metadata, and then understand something like dependency between the metadata, right? So today in your Salesforce org, if you like sort of create an Apex class, it's most of the times you will write a sockle which will have a dependency on a field. Now that field is part of an object, right? An object can be added to an app, right? So there is whole chain of this dependency that happens in the org, right? And very important to sort of understand this concept that one thing depends on the other. And the reason why we have to understand what is dependency is because if you do not manage these dependencies, you will see that your deployments might fail because you're not compiling everything as a package. So your deployments fail. Like, for example, I don't know if how many of you have sort of deployed Salesforce, right? If you try to deploy and if you miss, let's say you're deploying an Apex class, and if the field is not there in that XML packet, right, it will go and complain that there's no field existing, right? So there is this concept of reference from one metadata to the another metadata. And it's very important to sort of understand that there is a dependency that happens, right, between these metadata elements. Any questions on these two slides before we kind of go into other slides? I just wanted to take some time and talk about it because this is like the fundamental. If you understand dependency, then we can talk about like unlock package dependencies, etc. So I'm just looking, all good?
All good. Yeah, all good. Keep going.
Okay, looks like everyone is developer here, so they understand. Most of the admins do not understand this. Um, so now we come to this concept of package, right? So what is a package? A package is basically like a container, right, where you have all these multiple components, and a package should compile and validate, to move from one org to the other org. And you will see that a package, can depend on something like a feature license, right? Let's say you're working on some industry related product like financial services cloud or health cloud, or some products that have specific license requirements, right? And if your package sort of actually depends on that feature or feature license, right, the org where you are sort of installing this package, you should have that feature. Otherwise, again, the deployments will fail. And that is also one of the things to understand, especially when you are building code or building application for an ISV or an app exchange. How many of you actually build apps for ISV, or all of you like build for sandboxes, or do you build some kind of apps also for on app exchange? I just wanted to quick understand.
I think that we have a mix of we have developers that they are very used to go with ISVs creating
Yeah.
packages, and we also have a very large number of developers that are working with sandboxes and well trying to leverage all of these goodies that you mentioned.
Perfect. Yeah. So, this thing, like the last point that I have, will only make sense for ISVs, because as an ISV, what you can do is you can unknowingly sort of build a functionality on an object that might not be available for all the orgs, right? So your package then will not work, for, let's say, a customer who doesn't have that feature, right? So it's very important to understand and isolate it, basically. Let's say you're trying to build a package which you want to support for all the orgs. These are some of the things we need to be very, very careful. But if you are like on a sandbox, right, you already know that these are the features that you have, so this doesn't make a lot of sense. So development models, right? So these are the two development models we define. We are going to focus on package-based development, right? So we have org development model, that is, unpackaged. And this, in this development model, we basically, it's like you're configuring sales or service cloud application of the Salesforce, and it's like minimal metadata that you create, right? Like, let's say you're not creating that many Apex classes, or let's say, you're just configuring certain things. So in that case, okay, you can package everything as a chain set and push it, or you can use package.xml and pull all those things that you have created and sort of put it into the another org, right? And you, let's say you do not have access to like source control like Git, etc. Then this model sort of works, like the model on the left here, right? This is not most recommended model actually if you're creating a really custom application on the platform, right? It's always better to use package based development. And the reason why I say, even if you're an ISV, or if you're a system integrator, or you're building in a sandbox some kind of functionality, we still recommend to sort of build everything as an unlock package going forward, even if you're not building today, right? The reason for that is, if you like try to categorize your metadata into small modules, right? It is very easy to sort of assemble or disassemble, or basically it makes you agile, right? You know that this is the part of the code that you have to touch, right? And this is where you have to make changes, right? It's not one monolith that will, like, if you keep developing as a monolith application. Monolith means it's like one single punch without like dividing into submodules, right? If you keep developing like that, what will happen is your org will grow to a certain size, and when you extract everything from an org, your metadata will be in a lot of GBs, or let's say it's half a GB, right? It becomes very difficult. Let's say you have 100 classes, right? Now going through all those 100 classes, right? It's going to be very difficult. That's why what we say is we divide into smaller packets or packages. In that way, you'll know, okay, this part I need to only touch these things, right? And you'll go and modify that and then deploy it, right, as an unlock package. So that's why we recommend like package based development, because everything is modular. You don't have to sort of think about everything as a whole, right? So you can create these modules and test it using scratch orgs or sandboxes, right? And deploy this to your sandboxes and test it, and then move further. It becomes very easy to iterate on and keep building. Okay, everything clear up to this point? Should we move on?
Yes, clear.
Okay. All right, now to the fun part, right? So unlock packages. So when somebody says like 2 generation package, 2G package, right? It's a little bit difficult to sort of understand and think, okay, what is 2 generation package, right? Second GP package. But really it's a term used for two different things. One is 2GP manage packages. The other one is unlock packages. Now the difference between the manage package, and some of you might be aware of manage packages, when you build code in the manage package, typically the code is locked. Things like objects, right? For example, if you create an object, right, and let's say you write an Apex code, it is locked. The object is locked. Like, for example, now you cannot come back and modify the fields. Some of you might be used to this managed package development. You are familiar. Like, there is like, because we version everything, right, there is only little margin for error, right? You cannot like change certain things once the package is sort of locked, right? So that is 2GP managed packages, where things are locked and things have IP protection. IP protection means when you install it in a customer environment, right, you cannot see the code, right? Like, for example, today if I install a package like Financial 4 and an PSP package, there are a lot of things I will be able to see, objects, etc., but still like the IP, like the real logic behind some of the code, I won't be able to see them. For example, Apex classes uh, or triggers, right? I won't be able to see what is going on behind that because it's all locked, right? So that's 2GP package. It is meant for ISVs, and you should never build 2GP package for like an SI, right? And the reason for that is it will be IP protected, and it's locked. some things will get locked, and it's you, if you want to iterate, right, you have to be really careful about different things, right? So that is for ISV. Now, unlock packages is not just for ISV, it's also for SIs. If you are building an application today, right, you can build using unlock packages. So these are the three things it will give. It'll give maintainability, because, what you'll have is it is upgradable, right? So one of the problems with unmanaged packages, if you have used this, you cannot upgrade it. While unlock packages, you can upgrade, you can upgrade and deploy, right? It is modular, that is, you can break your app into multiple modules, right? um, and then you can use tools like scratch-r, Salesforce CLI, and Salesforce extension pack, etc. Everything is designed around it. Okay, so I'll show you now. So before that, right, there are two types of unlock packages, right? Now you might ask me the question, right? Okay, so Mohit, you are telling us that break your whole code that you have written for like 5 years into small packages. You're gonna say, you are foolish, right? You're asking us to redo a lot of stuff, right? And as there is no business benefit to it, right? Although you can see that as a developer you'll be benefited, right? But it's very difficult to sort of untangle, right, dependencies. So that's why what we recommend is, okay, so initially we had like org independent packages, right? Org independent unlock packages, where we were assuming that every client will go and refactor the code, right, into small modules, right? Practically, that is not possible for an org which has been there for like 5 years or 3 years or whatever, right? Because there's a lot of metadata that is there, and trying to separate it out might sound good in theory, right? But in practical, it's not that feasible. So that's why what we have is we have org dependent or runtime packages that we will take a look at it. So what is org dependent package or runtime package? So if you have a massive org and you cannot untangle, right? So org dependent package. So if you cannot untangle dependencies, right? What happens is in that scenario, right? We say, okay, make the package dependent on the org, you know so make the whole package depend on the org itself. That means, what will happen is during the runtime, right, when the package is getting created, it's not going to validate that, whether your metadata, and we will see with the demo now, I'll show you. So with the metadata, it will not validate whether the org has, this specific object or not. It's not going to validate. It's just going to create a package, and then, and you can use that and sort of install it, right? So org dependent packages, again, it's a massive org, and untangling dependency is not an option, right? Then you go for org dependent or the runtime packages, right? And I want to show you our documentation. Let's see if I can get hold of the documentation. So in the documentation, org dependent packages, right? So in the org dependent packages, right, if you go to our documentation, we will say this is a beta feature, right? And one of the things we say here is, see, the thing with the unlock package is you can build and install anywhere. But with org dependent packages, no, you won't be able to install anywhere. You will only be installed in your specific production or sandboxes, or wherever you already have that metadata. That dependency is there at the org level. It's not in the in the code, right? So the dependency validation, right, it occurs during package creation. In this case, in org dependent unlock package, right, it occurs during package installation. It's not during the package creation. During the package creation, it just sees that if everything is fine, it compiles. It doesn't look for dependencies. But when you install, that's where it will look for dependency, right? So that's why when the unlock packages, right, you can configure dependency between the unlock packages. But with org dependent packages, you don't need to configure any dependency, because the dependency is runtime and not during the compile time. Okay, so so we have, and one of the other things you will have to note down is go to the metadata coverage report, right? Whenever you do something in the org, not everything is available for unlock packaging. Like most of the times it's available. I must say, like, we have improved a lot on this, and I think more than 80 to 90% of the times you will find metadata for it as supporting unlock packages. But there might be few things that are not supported at this point. And, unfortunately, if the metadata is not supported for them, right, you'll have to manually sort of do it in both the orgs or all the environments. But if the metadata exists, you can still put it in, a folder which cannot be unlocked package, but you can still put it as a metadata. Okay. All right. So any questions before I kind of move down to demo and show you how to build, etc., and we can get on to the code?
I think, Mohit, that we have some questions that, but they are on the chat, and probably we'll like to discuss that after your demo.
Okay.
I don't know, guys, if you have other question.
No, not yet.
All right. Okay.
Keep going.
Okay. Yeah, I'll keep going. So the other thing I want to mention, and this feature, again, it's in beta. It says in pilot, but yeah, it's in pilot or beta feature, right? So one of the things is very difficult is actually knowing what you have changed in an org, right? Like tracking, source tracking, that means, or change tracking, that means if I create a field, right, I don't need to specify that or remember that I have to, to pull the metadata, right? So we give you this feature called source tracking in sandboxes now. Earlier, this feature was only available in scratch hours. That means in scratch hours, if I make any configuration change, right, and I run this command sfdx force source pull, it'll pull all the changes for me without me having to, create package.xml to pull that metadata out, right? So that feature, right, is now available for sandboxes also. And the way you turn that feature on is by actually going to your production environment, and in the production environment you will see DevHub. So in the DevHub you will see that source tracking for sandboxes. So you'll turn that on and then you refresh the sandbox, and then it will have the source tracking enabled. So once it has the source tracking enabled, you can use force source pull and force source push commands, to extract metadata from that sandbox and, just work with it, so it'll just keep track of anything that's changing. So runtime packages, right? It's ideal if you can use sandboxes, right, for runtime packages, because what will happen is it will have all the metadata from your production. Once you refresh a sandbox, right, from production, it'll have all the metadata, and it'll have all the dependency. So it becomes very easy to create your new app using this org independent packaging model, right? Because you have all the metadata, you can validate it, you can work, you can package everything up as an unlock package, and then just install it when you're ready to, your UAT environment, and then, sort of install that package to your production environment, right? Now you might ask me that, hey, Mohit, what? So all these unlock packages, right? What if I have like CI/CD implemented for my org, right? I have source control, I put everything in the source, right? I have CI/CD in place, which will automatically, a pipeline which will automatically sort of deploy everything from one org to another org, right? That's totally fine. That is also one way to sort of really work on things. It's totally fine, right? But what org dependent packages will give me is, you don't have to like sort of use pipelines. Also, I would recommend to use a pipeline like, CI/CD tool, like a continuous integration tool like Jenkins, or GitHub Actions or something like that, like Circle CI, to do that, right? But when you actually like, sort of deploy, right, when you bundle everything as a package, it becomes more modularized, right? And then, this thing, like, keeping it in one repo versus keeping it in other repo, that conversation becomes very easy, because then you can keep every package in, in different repositories. You can have, like, this is meant for like if you have a very big team, right? And there are lots of applications on your Salesforce org, right? Breaking them into different modules and breaking them into different Git repositories, right? And packaging it up will make your life so much more easier, right? One thing I would like to say is despite of all these technologies and tools, there is two aspect to it. That is process and people, right? So it's not just about these technology tools. It also, like when you're working in a very big environment, like very big Salesforce org, it's also collaboration, right? Collaboration with other teams to know what they are doing, because at some point you want to really know what is going on with the whole org, because there might be something that is dependent. Like for example, let's say you're working on an object and the same object is sort of shared between two different teams, right? Then the concept of like collaboration becomes very high, because they might put a validation which you might not be aware, and when you sort of deploy your package, it will just throw an error because you did not know about that thing, right? So yeah, it's very important to sort of collaborate on it. And objects are kind of separation units, right? So if you are like sort of building a new functionality, I always recommend that if possible, to sort of design it within your own objects, right? Not sort of mess with everything that's already going on in the org. It makes it much easier to manage. But yeah, it depends on your business need and other functionalities. Okay. All right. So now let's go on to hands-on coding, right? The fun part. Okay. So for coding, right, what I've done is I'm using one of our sample apps. I'll show you the demo of that app now. Let's see. So if you want to like get the source code of this whole application that I'm using, you can go to Easy Spaces LWC GitHub repository here on our website, right? And you can actually use the installation links to sort of install, right? So you can use the installation links here to sort of install these applications and work with it, right? But now I have an org where I have installed the app I'm going to show you now. Just give me a sec here. So this application, again, it's built. So the thing about this application, right, it is built with with modularity in mind. So you will see that we have different folders for different things. Like for example, Easy Space Management is a core application. So all the custom objects that we need, we put it in like base objects. All the styles we need, we put it in like a style folder, right? And all the base code is in base code. And then we define dependency here. Now note that this is to showcase the power of, sorry, just give me a sec. I need to be on develop branch. It's called sfdx project.json, right? So this one, right, like this way, this is unlocked package without sort of runtime in it, right? Or the org, it is org dependent package, org independent package, right? So that means this app can be installed anywhere. So what I did is I came and installed a bunch of like 4 different apps, because every folder that we have here, right, in this application is a package in itself. So this whole application, I'll show you what this application does. So this application basically, so I must be having something called space management application. So this is essentially a showcase application where, what we have is we have, let's say this is a fictitious event management company, and this company is handling like, reservation manager. That means what it's doing is we have leads and contacts, and, we are doing a reservation for them. So basically I click on it, and then, I say, okay, I want to, I want to occupy a space, right? Or something. So I create a reservation here, right? I draft a reservation, and this creates a reservation record, right? And now I can, design a space for this reservation record. Like I go here and say, okay, these people need the space for scheduled activity. They need outdoor exploration lab, right? It has a capacity of 50, right? So I add the space and, sort of give them that capability, like, so this is an application basically just to demonstrate that feature, right? Or create reservations basically. And this application is built modular, right? It is built using runtime packages, showing some error, ignore it. But I'll go over this. So this application, again, it's built using modular unlock package, which is org independent. That means it can be installed in any org, right? So if you want to install in your org, you can go and click on these links and install it, right? So this is an example that I'm taking. Now let's imagine that I need to build, okay, I have this in my org, right? Now let's imagine that I need to build another object, right? Another application, which sort of enhances this application. So this is like a base, but I want to enhance. Now imagine that all these solutions only available in your production instances, right? So let's imagine that for the now. And let's imagine that we are trying to build this new module as unlocked org dependent package. That means I expect that there are certain objects, right? So this let's see. So this package, right, has some objects. I'll show you now those objects. So if I go to Object Manager and Schema Builder, I'll show you what this application, it basically has 3 objects, right? Market, reservation, and space, right? So let's imagine that these 3 objects exist in this environment, right? Now this could be a managed package, this could be an unlocked package like the one that I've installed, right? Or this objects can come from, let's say, somebody just deployed it into this environment, right? Imagine this is your production org. Although this is a developer org, right? But let's imagine this is a production org. I didn't have access. I'm no more like consultants like you, so I don't have access to any production. But yeah, I'm using my developer org for this, right? So one of the features that I talked about, right? Source tracking in sandboxes, right? So you can enable that. Like if you have a sandbox, right? You can enable this in your production and then refresh to get the sandbox, where you will have this source tracking feature, which means you can run sfdx force source pull and push commands, right? And we recommend using that going forward, right? But you also need to have this dev hub enabled, and this one, enable unlock packages, because we are going to create unlock package. Now imagine that, okay, so this data model, right? Now imagine somebody like VP came and asked me that, hey boy, this is all good, this org is good, I want to sort of build a new program, right? Where I want you to create an object called, let's say, something like a promo code object, right? Where it is a lookup between, so for some market, right? For some markets or some states, I want to give some discount, right? So they will come and ask me that, hey, I want this project to be sort of created, right? And I assume that these dependencies are there. So let's see, how do I create that object, and how do I, sort of create an org dependent unlock package, okay? So let's start with it, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is use my Visual Studio Code, right? Let's close everything that I was working on. Let's open a fresh Visual Studio Code extension. So I don't know how many of you use this tool really, or this editor, right? And to make the experience easier, we have Salesforce extension pack. So if you download VS Code and install Salesforce extension pack, right? You will also need Salesforce CLI, right? So Salesforce CLI is our tool. And note that these unlock packages can only be created through the CLI today, right? There are no admin tools to sort of create these.
Mohit,
yeah,
we can only see your the browser. I don't know if you open in the VS Code.
The schema builder.
Let's see. Yeah. Desktop. I'm sharing the whole thing. Okay. Can you see now? Let's start.
Yeah, now we can see it. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that. So yeah, so here's the thing, right? So I have the VS Code, right? You have to install the extensions, and these are the extensions that we give. Now you need the CLI install, right? So if you have the CLI installed, you'll run SFDX version. So this will give you the version of the SFDX, right? So I'm running with 7.68.6, right? And I have Node 12.18 supporting this. So you need all these tools, right? And one of the things is you cannot use browser or there's no UI today, right? We only expose APIs at this point. Maybe in the future, safe harbor things might come. But anyway, so let's start creating a new project, right? So SFDX. Now I'm going to say create project, right? And let's say it's a standard project, right? I'm going to say promo code app, right? This is my new app called promo code. And I'm going to put it into one of the folders here. So this will scaffold me everything. So this just scaffolded me the project, right? Now I need to sort of connect this to a dev hub, right? Or an org. Let's see. It's just going to run. Okay, so now I need to authenticate. The next step is to authenticate to Salesforce environment so that I can work with it, right? So I'm going to authorize our dev hub, right, to begin with. So I'm going to say authorize a dev hub. So it's going to open, and I'm going to just quickly say this arg that I just used to authorize it. So at this point, I am connected to the arg, right? So I can verify by running this sfdx force config list. It will show me if my dev hub is there in place. So as you can see, my dev hub is there in the place, right? Now I will also need to authenticate to the actual arg, right, to retrieve the elements that I'm working on, right? So here I'm gonna just authenticate to this again. Now you can authenticate to this, or you can do something like this: force config. If you have once authenticated, right, you can just say force config set and say, instead of default dev hub username, you can say default username and just put the value of the thing that you have already authenticated. Okay, so I have the dev hub. Now if I run the config list, it will show both. It will show I have the dev hub and I have the default username. Okay, so both of them are same in this instance, right? In your instance, right, it could be the dev hub default username will be like the production org, right? And the default username will be like the sandbox, because I'm using, note that I'm using the developer org, right, to demonstrate this. So it's just using the developer org, but it will be production and this will be sandbox credentials. Okay, and you will log and authenticate and you'll set this, right? So once you do all these things, right, now we are ready to actually go to the org. Now look at this thing, handy thing. If you click on it, it'll open the org for me. I don't have to authenticate or do again, although I was already logged in. So let's go to Object Manager and create a new object. Okay, I'm gonna create a new object called promo code. Let's say promo code. One thing, okay, so yeah, so I'm gonna create a new object. I'm just gonna save this, and I'm gonna purposefully create a relationship like lookup, to something that exists only in this org. Like for example, market, right? So the promo code applies for the market. So I'm gonna go create an object, right? Everybody knows about this thing, right? Object creation in Salesforce. You must be knowing, right? Or all Salesforce developers.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say I have layouts. Let's say I've just saved it, right? Okay, so simple, right? So I established, now look at this. I established a dependency straight away on this object called market, right? Which I don't have in my local. See, I don't have in my local, right? I don't have this. So if I go to objects, is there an object folder? It's not even there, right? So there's nothing. This is a blank project, right? So yeah, it's a blank project and I don't have anything in this, right? So let's, in real world, you will obviously create more references and more custom metadata. Like for example, you'll create things like Apex class, referencing those objects. Like I'll reference market object, right? And this exists only in this org, right? Now, okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull that. Now remember, because this is not a sandbox, right? I cannot run this thing. If this is gonna give me an error. But in reality, right, when you're actually working on a sandbox, when you have the source tracking enabled, when you do SFDX for source pool, this is gonna give me an error for sure. But when you do this, right, when the source tracking enabled, right, it will basically give you only that thing that we just created, like only this object. That is the whole idea of source tracking, is when you refresh from the production, it will start tracking everything that you are doing. It's not going to pull everything from this org, right? It's just going to pull that. But because this is not a sandbox, this command did not work for me. But I'm just going to work around by just doing force source retrieve. So for source retrieve, if you don't know, It's a command that we give, and this doesn't have that source tracking and capability, but it'll still you will be able to specify the metadata and it will retrieve. For example, I know my metadata is custom object, right? And I know that I created this. Now see the disadvantage. I have to remember, okay, what did I do, right? To extract everything, right? And that's what we are trying to sort of basically get away with it, right? By giving you that source tracking in the sandbox. Okay, but for the demonstration, I'm gonna just say, give me these things, right? So it's just gonna pull. How many of you have used like for source retrieve commands? It's handy,
I,
but
I, I use it all the time.
yeah, it's handy, but you have to like remember, right? So now you see, now I have the objects, right? I have the neat little object, right? Now I want to show you one more thing. Actually, if a lot of you have asking me like, okay, hey Mohit, you know what? Sometimes I'm like, I want to pull certain things into my org, right? And I don't want to create package.xml because, it's a tedious process to create package.xml. I know one of the things I've been telling people that they do not know, and I don't know if you guys sort of know about this, but I'm going to show anyways, is there is this feature in sandboxes, in developer orgs, in production orgs, right? There is this feature called packages. I don't know if you have seen. A lot of times we think that, okay, package manager is for ISVs, we shouldn't come here. But that's not the reality of it. Like package, like let's say I have a test package here, right? See, the beauty of the package is when you actually add, like, for example, I go and say, um, object, where are the objects? So custom object, right? So I go and say, okay, I want to add only promo code object, right? But look at what happens. Okay, so it added the promo code object, right? It added the promo code object, but notice one more thing. It not only added the promo code object, it also added the page layout, and also it added this market automatically for me. And this is so powerful feature that a lot of us do not understand. Like this pulls all the dependencies for you, right? And the other thing this does is, like, let's say I want to, sort of get this thing out of, like, let's say I want to get this whole package out, right? There is this lovely command for source retrieve where you can say name of the package, right? And just put the thing. Now look at this, what happens. So this is gonna, ideally it should pull everything from the package. So even though it says nothing retrieved, right? It's just a misnomer. I don't know why it said like that, but really, see here, it created this, right? It gets you everything. One sec. There is one thing that it did not create it. And maybe because I already have this in the Force app, right? Where it is, one sec. So it did bring the layout. It did bring the XML packet, right? One thing it did not sort of brought in was the market objects, right? It did not. That seems like a bug that I need to file with the team. But really the idea of the package is like you give the package name, right? And you retrieve everything from the package. Which is weird that it did not sort of, it
Missing
seems
the
like a
field.
bug. What was that?
I think that the problem here is that the market object belongs to a namespace.
Yes, that is a good point, right? The market belongs to a namespace. So yeah, if I wanted to, like, which is weird because you can actually pull everything. I think we fixed something under the hood. Let's do this. Let's do, how many of you use Force MD API retrieve?
Not much.
Not much, right?
No.
Let's see what MD API retrieve does. If it is consistent, right, then we'll see what happens. Let's see. So the thing with the MD API is you can also do, so with the MD API, you can also do this thing. So you can say K and P. So you can say K is an unmanaged package, and then you can say package name, and then say the package name was test package, right? Okay, test package. Let's see what happens. one sec. So it's saying package names or package, and then what is it saying? Unexpected argument test package. Wait, did I not say the package name? So the K minus K is for unpackaged, right? Maybe I did not specify the retrieve directory. Just give me a sec here. So what is bad about this is they don't show us. Oh, the K is the file path. They say K is as the file path, but here they say it's an file path of the manifest of the components, and P is a package name. Okay, and D is the source directory, or is the retrieve directory. S is for single. Okay, so let's do this. Yeah, and one of the things you can always do is help on it, right? Like how I'm doing. I don't remember these commands a lot of the times. So I always do like a help. It does work, it does help. What's the name of the package? And then because it's a single package, I can say, let's see what happens. Okay, now it's giving me the correct thing. So it requires a retrieve directory, right? So in my example, the retrieve directory, let's say, I'm just gonna create a folder here to show you. Sorry, here. MD API, I'm just gonna MD API, rename this to. Okay, so I'm gonna just give MD API, right? MD API, my retrieve directory. I wanna see what it retrieves, you know? I'm more curious now. Is it only retrieving the, okay, so one of the things that happens is I have to unzip it, right? Let's go back to the folder where I can unzip it. Or if anybody remembers the command to sort of unzip this. Okay, so this is inside what? Promo code app. Promo code app, unzip it. The API. Let's unzip this. That's inside this. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, it's consistent. Okay, so I think the problem is same, you know, because it is one of them is like from the namespace, as I think somebody pointed out, right? So when you have like a namespace, right, it's, you know, it just skips it, which is good to know. I just learned myself, like, okay. But let's say, you know, you do not have anything in the namespace and you're creating certain things and you want to retrieve everything, you can certainly use this approach to put everything in a package and retrieve it, you know. Very handy, especially when you're sort of building applications. And I think I just deleted, but you know, it also gives you the package XML. Like MD API also gives you the exact package XML. So that's something good to note. Anyway, so now I'm gonna delete this test package. I just want to delete this. Okay, so let's say, did I delete it? Ah, go. Okay. Too bad. It's, you know, deleting one by one. Anyway, so now, right? So I have retrieved these objects, right? Now let's see, how do I create a package, right? So let me create a package. And to create a package via the command line, the command is sfdx force package create. It's simple. But then I want to do a help to see how I can create the package, right? So in this case, right, I want to create a package, an org dependent package, right? So I'll give a package name as, let's say, promo code package, right? Promo code package. Let's give it the name. And then, yes, it is an unlock package, right? We can say it's an unlock package. We also need to give the path, right? Like force app. Now you can rename this and say promo code app and give it the path. It's totally fine. But one important thing in the runtime packages, you have to say it's an org dependent package, right? That means it doesn't look for other dependencies and it just creates the package, right? So I'm gonna say org dependent package, right? Yeah, everything looks good. Let's create one. So now it will give, okay, so now it gave me a package ID, right? So it gave me, so look at this. So one of the things it gave me here was this depends on unpackaged metadata in the installation org and is a beta feature. Use source tracking in sandboxes to develop your org dependent packages, right? So yeah, so this is the package. Now, this package is not something that you can install. This is just the header or the wrapper around it. You actually need to create a package version, right? So let's create a package version. So you say force package package version and then create, right? So you're creating a package version, again, do a help on it. So I don't remember, right? So it'll give you a help and examples, right? And we can just follow along, right? So in this case, I don't want any password to set, right? But I definitely want to sort of create a version of the project or the package, right? So I'll just use this. This seems more meaningful to me always. Sorry, it did not copy everything. Yeah, so I'm gonna give some things like, okay, P is for the package number, right? So where's the package number? Now note that if you lost this package number, right, you can always get it. It should have put it here. Here it is. It always constructs this for you automatically. Note that this file is getting updated automatically, and you can even put your version name or version number, etc. Right? So now I'm gonna say, okay, create a package with this package version with this. I want to skip the password. Like you can even set the password if you want for your package, right? But I'm gonna say -x, that will skip the password. I'm gonna say -x, and then what else? You can also set the API version. The package is there. I think this should be sufficient actually to create a version. So let's do this. Now notice that the package version creation will be asynchronous process, right? So it's gonna take some time. Now in this case, it's just like one object, so it might be over here a couple of times. I run this. Okay, so I think the package is ready. It says it's success, it's created, right? And this is the package installation URL, right? Now notice that I created a package which with one object, it did have dependency, right? It did have this market field, which actually depends on market C object. We did not have that in the source, right? And yeah, like it still created the package, right? Now let's imagine that I try to install this in one environment so let's go to another environment, okay? Let me go to separate some environment and try to install this package and see what happens. Is gonna install, anybody? How many of you think it's gonna install?
I don't think so, unless you have the easy spaces installed.
Perfect. Yeah, that's what. Let's see in action, right? So yeah, that is correct. Like, and one of the things is, see, if you have Apex, right, we have these two options, whether you can say, you want to compile or not, right? In this case, I don't have, right? But yeah, let's say I want to install this, right? So this is not going to install, as rightly pointed out, because the object doesn't have the dependency, right? So it's going to clearly say that now when it is like trying to install it, it's going to say. So you see, so it says the reference to value does not result to a valid S object type, right? The reference is actually missing. Okay. So yeah, that's interesting, right? So it will not install now. Okay, so this is not going to install, right? Now, what happens if I install in the same environment which I built it up, right? Let me log out of this, avoid confusions. So let's see. If the session is active still is. Oh. So I'm just installing in the same environment that I built, but ideally imagine your production has those dependencies, right? And we try to deploy this, right? It will basically, so I'm gonna say install for all admins, right? Install, now it should all just install, fine, you know? It'll come back and it'll install fine. Now, remember that I'm not using real sandboxes in production, but it assumes that your production will have these objects that you have linked on, right? And then you have built it, right? Like as you can see, now the installation is sort of complete, right? So you see there is a promo code package that got installed, and if you go and view its dependencies, maybe there's no dependency here, but if you view the components, it will say it depends on, it has this one field and an object, right? But really this object is a reference object to, to another object here, right? So the package type, look at the package type, it says org dependent unlock package, right? Clearly it says org dependent unlock package, but let's look at other packages here. Here, right, it says unlocked, right? So that was org dependent unlock package that we got created. Now, one of the things I want you to pay attention is what happens if somebody installs this, right? Let's say I install this and say do not choose the copy of the data. So what happens is when you install it, you will see that the object also gets deleted from the org. And that's something to keep in mind. See, the object is gone because I just installed it, right? So that's why it's important to even follow the source control and put this code in source control so that you can create the package whenever you want, or basically you will install the package. Now, let's say you have built something on top of this package, it will not let you delete it because it will say there are some dependencies here and there that you have to get rid of it. Yeah. So that is org dependent packages, right? Now, if you want to sort of go deeper, right, take a look at our sample gallery applications, right? We have a lot of content there around, different things, especially usage of all these new tools and technologies and automation. Easy spaces, right? It shows you how to like structure your project, how to like write automation to create, packages on fly using CI/CD techniques. Yeah. Any questions? Okay, so I'll take some questions on this, and I hope that this whole thing made a lot more sense, in terms of what is unlock package and org dependent, etc.
Thank you.